and the landscape of modern fantasy cinema. Few films are as forgotten and as strangely fascinating as Reign of Fire. Released in 2002 and largely dismissed at the time, the movie is now something of a cult curio, a dark fantasy set not in some medieval realm but in a post-apocalyptic version of 2020 Britain, overrun by fire-breathing dragons. While the film stumbled in its storytelling, it succeeded in crafting a unique atmosphere and boasted a cast so stellar, it's surprising the movie isn't talked about more often. A fantasy apocalypse like no other. Rather than swords and sorcery, Reign of Fire throws its dragons into a scorched modern world, where a handful of survivors cling to life in the ruins of civilization. The film begins in the early 2000s, with a young boy named Quinn accidentally awakening the ancient creatures from their subterranean hibernation during a mining operation. 2 decades later, Quinn, now an adult played by Christian Bale, leads a battered community taking shelter in a centuries-old Northumbrian castle. The central conflict emerges when American dragon slayer Denton Van Zon, Matthew McConaughey, arrives with a paramilitary unit and a radical new plan: take the fight to the dragons rather than hide from them. As Quinn's cautious leadership clashes with Van Zon's reckless bravado, the film becomes a tense character study set against the high-concept backdrop of a dragon apocalypse. An unexpected dream team: Bale, McConaughey, and Butler. Though Reign of Fire received lukewarm reviews for its plot, its cast was, in retrospect, extraordinary. Bale, McConaughey, and a then-rising Gerard Butler form the emotional core of the story, with each actor bringing surprising gravitas to an otherwise pulpy premise. Bale's Quinn is a haunted protector, deeply committed to preserving human life. McConaughey, meanwhile, goes all in on Van Zon's battle-scarred machismo, complete with shaved head, tattoos, and a massive axe. Butler adds warmth and humanity as Creedy, Quinn's loyal second-in-command. Seeing these 3 actors, each of whom would go on to lead major Hollywood blockbusters, working together in a gritty, effects-driven survival fantasy is reason enough to revisit the film. Supporting performances by Isabella Scorupco, Goldeneye, and Alexander Siddig, Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, further round out a cast pulled from all corners of genre cinema. A clash of ideals and one giant dragon. At its best, Reign of Fire leans into the ideological clash between Quinn and Van Zon. Quinn, having seen firsthand the devastation dragons can bring, believes in preserving life through caution and retreat. Van Zon, however, is convinced that offensive action, particularly targeting the only male dragon responsible for the species' proliferation, is the only way to win. This push-pull dynamic erupts into violent confrontation, eventually forcing Quinn to embrace a more aggressive stance after tragedy strikes. By the film's final act, the world has shrunk to just a few surviving characters and one towering alpha dragon. The CGI, particularly for the time, is genuinely impressive, dark, smoky, and terrifyingly real. While the dialogue thins out, the actors' performances, combined with a visual spectacle, keep the tension alive. Spectacle over substance. Where Reign of Fire falters is in its script. The story often feels rushed, with character decisions that defy logic or scenes seemingly inserted just to justify a cool set piece. For example, young Quinn's early discovery of the dragons, thanks to improbably friendly miners letting him wander into a new dig site, feels contrived. Other narrative missteps, like reckless civilians wandering out to harvest crops despite known dragon activity, also strain credibility. Similarly, while the helicopter/paratrooper scenes look thrilling on paper, they clash with the film's internal logic. Dragons are repeatedly shown as faster and deadlier than human aircraft, yet these missions somehow remain plausible within the story. The film often sacrifices coherence for cool moments, leaving audiences to wonder what could have been if the screenplay had matched the caliber of its cast and visuals. Why it's worth revisiting today. Despite its flaws, Reign of Fire remains a compelling oddity. It's a rare example of a dark fantasy film willing to break from genre norms and set its story in a bleak near future rather than the distant past. And while its narrative missteps keep it from greatness, its world-building, performances, and creature effects still hold up remarkably well. More than 2 decades later, Reign of Fire is a reminder that even flawed films can carry sparks of brilliance. It may not have reshaped the genre, but it certainly burned its own path, and in doing so, left behind a scorched, unforgettable vision of dragons not as myths, but as modern-day monsters.